I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. Our guest expert today, Nate Joens, co-founder of Structurally, based out of Iowa. Really cool, Nate, to have you on the show and talk about Structurally, which for those that don't know, has this awesome platform. And many of us have probably experienced it. If you've ever gone onto a website, been interested in something, and all of a sudden you start doing this chat feature, and it could be over text or it could be on the computer where you've got an AI assistant. Nate is someone that has kind of built that product for real estate. So Nate, welcome to our show. And how in the world did you kind of get to this place where you said, we need to have this structured feedback when cold leads are coming into a website or coming in from some sort of app to a real estate professional? How did you come up with this product? And then how does it help people?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle, for having me on. I really appreciate being here. Love the show and love to learn alongside everyone in the industry. And that's really how we kind of came to be at Structurally. I'm fresh out of school, 4 years ago now, at Iowa State University. And I really, kind of spent my time in school wanting to get into real estate, just not knowing how. So actually during my time there, me and my co-founder spoke to probably hundreds of agents. We even went to like the big events like Inman and NAR and just kind of tapped agents on their shoulder and said, hey, tell me about your business. Tell me about your life. What do you struggle with doing? And it constantly kept coming up that lead follow-up and lead conversion is a huge pain point. I think everyone listening and everyone that we work with can probably agree that being in the field is a lot more fun. You're closer to a deal. You're closer to the commission check. You're closer to closing. But the behind the scenes stuff, setting tasks, setting reminders to email, to text, to follow up, all that kind of mundane work, like following up with leads, is really, really tricky. So we kind of kept hearing that over and over and over and decided to solve that with technology. And that is, now what Structurally is today, where we're getting leads from all of our customers, whether you're bringing them in from, portals like Zillow, generating them yourself over, pay-per-click like Facebook, or an old database of leads that might have gone cold. Those leads are gold. The fortune is always in the follow-up, and you can sift through all those leads with a product like ours to kind of find the golden nugget in the mine there in the stack. So that's really what our product does, focuses over text and email. All of this kind of behind the scenes work is so important to getting you more consistent, closing, so you can actually do more of what you love in the field.
Yeah, it's a great product. And the reason I feel that way is you're right. Most agents like myself, daily practitioners, we're on inspections, we're at appraisals, we're meeting with clients, hopefully kneecap to kneecap. And if you're anything like me, you're wondering, okay, what's going on in the background? Is there going to be new business happening in the next 45 days or so? Or do I have to hustle back to the office, get on the phone, start calling clients and talking to people and generating more of those leads? And so I think that this idea of having an AI assistant, someone that can sort of harvest and nurture the leads, and I say someone, it's a computer, while then you come into the office or you have ISAs, inside sales associates, that would follow up with these leads. I think it's genius. Obviously, it's happening quite a bit, and there's several different folks out there that have products like this. What makes your product really different or unique, and what have you found some of your great clients, the testimonials that you're hearing, Nate? Why are they using your product and continuing to subscribe to your product?
Yeah. I think one of the big key differentiators for agents themselves as well is conversation quality, is what I'll call it. What are you saying to your prospects, your leads, your clients, either in person, over the phone, over text, over email? What is your general customer experience? Just thinking about when they find you on your website or on a portal, they see your brand, they decide to actually fill out a form and go with you. That process alone is kind of a big deal. A lot of folks are very hesitant to do that because they don't want to get inundated. They don't want to talk to someone who's just going to sell them. They don't want to be called until they die, basically. So just thinking through the customer experience is a big deal. And that's something that we set out to solve really early on in the form of having very empathetic conversations. So that might sound counterintuitive because how can AI, a computer, have empathy? That was a tough problem to solve, but something that we've solved. We've had over 4 million conversations since the time, we started over text and email. And we found that 99.9% of customers actually believe they're talking to a human when they're talking to our product. And that analysis was done by looking at granular level messages that leads are saying, and 0.1% of them are asking questions, like, is this a human? I don't think you understand me, things like that. So we're very deliberate in trying to make our conversations feel very human-like. And all of our scripts, is what we call them, are entirely customizable. So they're much more people-based versus property-based. So I would say that to anyone listening, that's a huge kind of shift in our philosophy and talking to customers that we learned early on, that if you're getting a lead, if you've just got a lead, and the first thing that you do is say, okay, saw you liked 123 Main Street. Do you prefer a 2-bed or a 3-bed? What's your price range that you're looking at? Where are you looking at? What locations are you looking at? Those questions are really surface level, but they don't build any rapport that you can kind of build on. They won't remember the conversation. They don't want to continue the conversation. If you can get at more, driving underlying questions like, what's got you thinking about moving? Tell me more. And those, just deeper questions, more about them and what's got them thinking about moving. Not only do you have a better foundation to build on when you meet them in person, but you have a better foundation to continue to follow up with them, even if they're not ready to go today. Because I think that's a huge aspect that's often overlooked with, mostly internet leads or, your existing database is, even if they're, really aggressive hand raisers ready to go, the soonest they're going to move is 1 to 3 months. But most pay-per-click leads, most Facebook leads, most purchase leads take 12 to 18 months to actually buy. And you need some content to follow up with them for that year to year and a half. And you want to make sure that, you have their motivation, you can keep coming back to that motivation and really driving that home. So that's something that our product does. It does that long-term follow-up. It does the empathetic based conversations. And it's, a little more consistent than a lot of humans, because to be very honest, humans are pretty inconsistent people. Computers are typically not.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think about it, it's like, best intentions, of course, unfortunately, not fulfilled. And I think about this, I might be the only person that's in this podcast audience that will say this, but I'm a little bit of a control freak extraordinaire, right? And what happens is, and I think a lot of successful agents are, they realize that, okay, and there's a lot of positivity around this, is if it's meant to be, it's up to me to make this happen, right? And so you get rewarded for all the hard work and effort and continued, your personal brand is out there. And so the idea of a bot or a computer communicating on my behalf or someone else's behalf that's really going to be a brand ambassador is a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that your product, Nate, you're upfront saying we want this to seem as authentic and empathetic as possible, and really be there 24/7 when you might be out doing showings, you might be out with a client, might be out of town on a vacation for once. Good for you. And you want something to be there to hold on to that storefront to make sure that lead is harvested and nurtured, and so that when a human can follow up on it, that number one, it's a much warmer lead than it started off. You've got more information, and number two, we all know that pretty quick. People are popping onto different sites or different apps, and all of a sudden they're here in a second and gone a second later. So I think all of that sounds to me very attractive. What are some of the statistics behind cold calling, canvassing, ISAs, and just kind of how successful this can be, but also how long it takes for a lead to be nurtured? I heard you say it might be 12 months to 18 months. I've heard also, and I've read on your website, that there could be something like 6 to 10 different points of contact before a lead starts to really trust you. So if someone's interested in really building their business, saying, look, I can't do this on my own anymore, I need the help of some AI, but then also an ISA, what are some things that structurally you've seen as far as success statistically?
Yeah, no, I think we were kind of talking about this earlier, but one of the stats that we've seen just kind of before structurally even, and kind of during when we were talking to inside sales agents kind of across the country, is we heard that their connection rate when they're making phone calls was plummeting. And we kind of uncovered some information. This was probably about a year ago that we did that webinar series, that dials are dying. Especially now when we're inundated with phone calls from spam, from who knows what. We're first to ignore them. We'll never pick up the phone from a number that we don't know, and that probably breaks a lot of agents' hearts, because most of the time when you get an internet lead, they probably don't have your business or work phone number saved. They have no idea who you are. They barely even know what happened when they just filled out that form. Again, coming back to that customer experience, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what to expect. So when your first step is to cold call them, they're not going to answer. And that's why we've seen connection rates drop quite a bit. And that's why texting and emailing have become much more of a staple. So you can introduce yourself, warm them up a little bit, and then schedule a warmer phone call so that they actually know a phone call is coming, expect it to be coming at a certain time, and you have a much more likelihood to connect with them. So some of the stats that we've seen across the board today, I'm going to break it down by like pay-per-click versus what I call portal leads, because I think they're so different. Pay-per-click leads, we've seen about a 50% response rate to our text messages, and a 12% what we call qualification rate. So those are basically hand raisers. They've responded and they want to take a next step to some capacity. And then a 2% appointment set rate. So 49% response, 12% qualification, 2% appointment rate. If you can remember those, that was the pay-per-click leads. On the portal leads, we see a 63% response rate, a 37% qualification rate, and a 13% appointment rate. So almost across the board between the pay-per-click leads, so Facebook, Google, kind of your own, generated leads, versus portal leads, about a 10% increase on those portal leads, which makes sense. Those portal leads are typically a little more expensive. They're further down the funnel. Someone going to a site like Zillow is a pretty aggressive hand raiser. They want to go see that property pretty quickly. Whether or not they've actually got the means to buy it or ready to go is kind of something that our product does determine. But that's typically what we see across our, product. And I think that is kind of the underlying foundation of why most portal leads are typically 6 to 8 months out before they purchase. And most pay-per-click leads are that 12 to 18 months out before they purchase. They just take a little bit of, a little more bacon in the oven, but they're cheaper typically. And that's a perfect kind of opportunity for you to think about ways to scale your business. I always have said that a great real estate business is a healthy blend of both pay-per-click, portal, obviously in, sphere of influence, and referrals if possible. Just a healthy blend of those. The one thing that I will also say that I think is often overlooked is, this is kind of a thought-provoking exercise that I like to play, is what happens if you stopped paying for leads? If you're currently paying for leads today, what if you just pulled the plug on all of them? What would your business do? Would it stand up? Would it survive? Would it implode? I think it's a fun thought experiment to kind of think through what would happen. My kind of 2 cents on that is, if you don't have an ISA, an inside sales agent, a product like ours or anything in the mix that's responsible for nurturing that huge database of leads you probably have right now collecting dust, then you're missing a massive opportunity. Obviously, our product kind of works across all across the board. New leads from portals, new leads from pay-per-click, but also it can kind of dust off those old leads in your database that might have gone cold. I have always said that, I think that many businesses have so much gold in their database that they could unplug from these from their lead providers and just work that existing database and continue to grow their business. So think about that as a little thought experiment coming away from this.
Yeah, Nate, it's a great thought for us to have, because I think most people think of lead generation as, I got to get new, I got to go pay for it. And there is, the statistics are there. You just shared them with using your product, whether you're doing the portal leads on some of the more real estate niche websites, your Zillows and your Realtor.coms. But then also people think of, I got to do Facebook or Google pay-per-click stuff. But your product actually helps someone that has a CRM, that has existing data. And I'm going to run through a series of questions that my podcast producer, Ann Russell, and I pulled up from the website, because this is speaking, again, think about that solopreneur, that control freak extraordinaire. We'll call him Kyle right now, just so we're not pointing anybody out. But it begs a lot of different quick hitter questions here. So if you've got the ability to plug your CRM into your product at Structurally, one of the first questions is, do you email my contacts?
Yes, our product does work over email as well. So I think that what we found is a great two-pronged approach, where if, email alone is kind of a soft, channel. Lots of people just ignore emails. But if you can couple email with text and kind of bounce them off each other, and in your email say, hey, I just texted you, wanted to see if email's better. What do you think? Or in your text say, hey, I just emailed you, but wanted to see if text is better. That kind of two-pronged approach works really well. So that's why we offer both.
Totally agree. And I see myself doing that with my own clients. Hey, just so you know, you've got this contract to sign, and I'm sending you a text message just in case you didn't see it through email. Or what if it got caught in spam or whatever? So I do that actively. So I think it's super smart that you have that combo. The next quick hitter question here is, do you speak Spanish? Not you, Nate, but does the AI, does it speak Spanish? Because that's such a huge market, obviously globally, but then here in the United States. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I personally do not speak much Spanish, although I took it in high school, but our product does fluently. We actually wrote all of our conversations with a native Chilean realtor. She took all of our conversations and translated them into actual, real native Spanish language, not Google Translate, because they're different. So we wanted to make it feel very authentic. It does also speak other languages if you want to customize that. So like I said, our product is fully customizable. Although we don't support all of our scripts in French, for example, out of the box, you can do that yourself if you speak French and want to bring that into the fold.
Very, very cool. All right. This again, speaking to that control freak out there, we'll call him Kyle for right now. Can I see what you're saying to my contacts? Big one.
Yes, all the time. We have mobile apps for Apple and Android, as well as an agent-facing dashboard that big button right in the middle that lets you mute or unmute the conversation at any point. And you'll get notified of all these conversations happening in real time. And again, our goal is to not have any agent log into yet another system. Most of our conversations are integrated with a lot of the CRMs that you're working with. So you can actually see those conversations happening in real time in your CRM and kind of manage it and take it over there as well. So we always want you to be in the loop of what's being said to one of your most valuable assets in your leads and your contacts.
Very cool. That answers an important question for me. And then the next follow-up is, how long does it take to train structurally?
Yeah, so we have a huge buffet of out of the box, what we call kind of scripts and drips. So a script is just the two-way conversation that we kind of have with the lead to qualify them once they respond. A drip is the follow-up cadence that we have with unresponsive leads. So we have a huge buffet of those that are pre-built for you, from renters to buyers, sellers, property inquiries, forced registration, investors, just a huge suite of very specific scripts to your lead type that you can use out of the box. If you want to tweak certain things about those scripts, the control freak nature a little bit, you can actually just duplicate a lot of those templates and tweak them to your specific needs and wants, which takes no time at all. So really you could get stood up, integrated, and up and running with your leads within 30 minutes. If you want to take a little more time to customize your scripts, that can take, an additional 30 minutes or so, however detailed you want to get. But we try and make it really out of the box ready. And we're constantly updating those scripts and drips on our side after what we're learning, seeing, looking through those 4 million conversations to continue to improve them too.
Very good. Okay. So this is broker owner of a boutique brokerage firm now communicating, because I got a bunch of other sales folks that are going to want to know, hey, where's the leads? Like you think of the Glenn Ross leads, or, we were just watching The Office the other day with our kiddos, and, where are those coveted leads that, Saber's sending to us or whatever. So how do you know, Nate, which rep to assign these leads to? How do you know if you got multiple ISAs or multiple sales professionals that might be getting these leads?
Yeah, that Office episode is phenomenal. And it kind of makes me think about how valuable leads are. And it makes me cringe when he throws them in the dump. So I feel that pain, and I sometimes want to skip that episode because of how cringeworthy it is, but I still love the show. But we integrate with your CRM, like I said. So we typically copy a lot of the lead routing rules that are done in the CRM because they're really powerful there. You can do round robin, percent based, day based, on the clock based, or whatever you want to call it, or Shark Tank, or first to claim type approach. So those are all different lead routing rules that we've seen and that are set up within our product that we typically like to copy or mirror from your CRM. And that's done through our integration. So we're typically just listening to whatever your CRM says to assign the leads back out from our product. Very cool.
All right, 2 final questions here on the product, and then we'll get to know Nate behind the product. We have to know you as Nate, the person. All right. So I think about this with a lot of technology. Okay. We're already very productive when you have the ability to afford a product like this. And so one of the things that I personally see as a successful realtor, as a broker owner of a company, as a podcast host, as obviously a husband and a parent, like the last thing I want is something else to check on. And so I can see this sort of being like the movie Bruce Almighty, where, all of a sudden Bruce realizes like being God is, you got a lot of prayers to answer, and all of a sudden it just starts inundating you with all this data. And for someone who's not a tech guy, I could see that almost being one of the things that would sort of paralyze me from even wanting to do it. It's like, I don't have another thing to check on. So how do you notify your customers of these leads, and how is that a process that's not totally inundated or something that becomes burdensome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I understand that overwhelming nature for sure. We do something that we call stages. So our product automatically categorizes leads into 5 stages: interested, not interested, responded, not responded, and qualified or needs follow-up. You can actually adjust your notifications in our product to get text alerts, email alerts, or mobile app alerts for any of those stages. What we see most commonly is our teams will only turn on notifications for that qualified or needs follow-up stage. So The rest of the leads are not, forgotten. You're just not immediately notified about them unless you want to go in and check in the product. The real beauty is you're only going to be notified of qualified leads that need agent follow-up. They've either said, I want a phone call, requested an appointment of some kind, have a very specific question that needs answering. Our AI is doing the categorization of those stages. And so we want you to, you can obviously set up your workflow however you want. If you want to be inundated with notifications, which we see some agents do, they're like, I want everything. I want to see it all. Again, the control freak nature, because they want to see everything. Some of our other teams are just like, I only want the hot leads. I only want to be notified of those that really need my attention. So then you can turn on that notification for only the agent ready leads. So we really want it to be as, again, in control as you possibly can, because at the end of the day, they're your leads, they're your contacts. You've done a lot of work to build your brand, to purchase them, to generate them somehow. And so we're here in the background to make your life easier, not more difficult and overwhelming.
Very cool, Nate. So I said I had two final questions. You aced the first question. The final question, I think it's what everybody is doing, is do I have to sign up for some, forever contract here that's 5 years? And of course, what does it cost? So if someone's interested in Structurally, what's the commitment, and sort of what's your brand promise as it relates to what someone might be paying?
Yeah, there's no contracts. You can start for free on a 14-day trial if you really want to test it out. Our pricing starts at $299 a month. It's all lead volume based. So you can kind of, decide that you only want to send Zillow leads or only Facebook leads to start. And then you can bring in your old leads and send 1,000 leads through. So it kind of scales up from there, going from $299 a month to $499 a month to $999 a month and beyond. And it's all, again, based on lead volume. So, that counts new leads in a given month. So it's not like the leads roll over by any means. If you get a lead in month one, it's going to count in month one, even though we're going to follow up with that lead 52 times over text and email over a year. You don't get charged for that lead every month following. It's just those new leads that you bring in during that month.
Nate, this is incredible. And for anybody that's listening in, it's not like I'm a paid pitch man. It's not like we rehearse this a ton. Like, I'm listening in with sincere interest, and I'm amazed that it's so relatively inexpensive for what sounds like an amazing product. And so it's like a time for a call to action. What does it take for someone to actually get signed up with Structurally, and what does that look like, from an opt-in standpoint? It sounds really cool. You can do the freemium, and then I like how you just put it. You can step it into maybe your colder leads or your more distant leads, and then once you trust the product, it's like, oh, now I see it. Proof of concept here. I want you talking to my best clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the best way to get started is obviously just structurally.com. There's ways that you can get in touch with our sales team. You can go ahead and start on your own if you want. But I always like to kind of put my money where my mouth is too. A lot of people are hesitant, turned off, and scared of putting AI on their most valuable asset. I completely understand that in leads. If you want to test it out yourself as well, you can actually go to testyouraiassistant.com and fill out a form as if you were a lead and talk to our product yourself. My only spiel here is don't try and say ridiculous things. Most leads, they do say all sorts of things. We see life stories from people like going through a divorce, things like that are really deep. But when you're asking, we see a lot of people who want to test it and say like, are aliens real? Things like that leads would really never say. We have responses for them because we got tired of trying to work around it. But pretend like you're a real lead, pretend like you're looking for a house or a mortgage or something. Talk to the AI assistant and, have a conversation and see if you trust it yourself. But we typically see that once you actually get into that proof of concept phase, you'll see a really strong conversation within 3 months, pretty much guaranteed. You're going to see a conversation that's really eye-opening, someone telling you their life story, either in a positive or negative way, and the AI empathizing. And it's a really exciting experience to see that.
I'm so glad that you brought up proactively sort of the tomfoolery that humans can get into. I think of my kids. I'm fortunate to have a sixth grader and two fifth graders. The twins constantly ask their smart speaker all sorts of wild questions. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know that there's some people out there like, oh, I'm gonna mess with this thing, man, and I'm gonna break the system. So
Yep.
it's great that you've programmed that in. It's like, hey, we know you're gonna ask that goofball question. So
Yep.
let's hit our audience one more time, Nate, with those two websites. We got structurally.com, and was it test? What was the AI assistant one?
Yeah, test, TEST, testyouraiassistant.com.
Awesome. So check those out. So Nate Joens, let's find out a little bit more about you. I think that technology and people in the real estate profession, whether you're tech oriented or just love the real estate profession, business owners appreciate efficiency, repeatable systems, which is what we've been talking about all along, to capture more leads, make your business more productive and profitable. So what are you doing personally on a daily basis? If you ever feel like, man, I've just been in this sort of rut, or I'm in this really heavy work season, really stressful season, what do you do to calibrate your life on a daily basis? As an homage to our podcast name and our real estate brokerage, I love to know what people do to calibrate their life on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would say just surround yourself by really smart people. I always, kind of on the other side, I like to aggressively say, as a business leader, you should be the dumbest person in the room. Otherwise, you haven't hired correctly. So I think constantly calibrating myself with my team, which consists of machine learning engineers, data scientists, software engineers, and salespeople, marketing people, is one way I like to calibrate myself, is just getting a different perspective from my team members who, A, are coming at whatever problem I have with fresh eyes, and B, most likely coming at whatever problem I have with a smarter brain. So that always helps me.
That's a great answer. And I think of the word calibrate. The reason I like it so much is it's a verb, it's action. It's taking, these experimental results and then improving upon it, making your next step a little bit better than the first, because you've got data behind it. And that's what structurally is all about. So I've got to think follow-up question here about calibration, about calibrating. How can your users take that data and really improve their client journey? What are some of the things that you're just seeing on the front lines, that you hear feedback from some of the users that are in the real estate space that help them calibrate their lives on a daily basis using structurally?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'll just hit it one more time. The fact that dials are dying relatively is one way that we calibrated a lot of our businesses and folks that we've worked with, because they said, hey, look, I'm making all these phone calls. No one's picking up. What do I do? Well, that's because, XYZ, they don't know your number. They don't trust you yet. They have no idea what they're getting into. So make a little tweak and get into texting and emailing, then go after a phone call. So that's one way that we've seen kind of a shift in calibration wise. I think another way would just be in terms of our scripting. Like I said, we on our side are constantly reviewing the millions of conversations we're having. And if we see a particular question not working out like we thought, I can think of a lot of different ways where, we ask questions like, can you tell me a little bit more about your situation? That's kind of a really open-ended question, but we did it on purpose to get at why they want to move. But what we saw in questions like that are really open-ended, where people didn't know where to start. They just said things like, well, what do you mean? I don't know what that means. And so kind of really granularly looking at these different parts of your script and your conversation. Although we have a very structured scripting language in how you use our product, we don't particularly believe in scripts. One of our best script is just tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. That's pretty much all you need in the scripting world. So I think that's kind of a long-winded answer of different ways that we see kind of calibration through your kind of go-to-market approach, as well as what you actually do when you're in the market. I
think it's super important. And I appreciate you following up on that second part of the question, because that's the name of the game. Is there's a lot of competition in our business. There will continue to be. And if we can do just that one little twist of the screw there that makes things a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, makes our lives easier, makes us more, you're getting into more qualified conversations. I mean, it's fantastic. So thank you, Nate. The second question is a second question is one of the things that I really like, I ask all my guests, and that is this idea of dear younger me. I think a lot of us, again, if you think about Calibrate, a lot of us think, gosh, I wish I knew this information years ago. And now that I know it, it could have been so much more effective. I could have worked through all these failures so much more efficiently or solved these problems faster. So if you had the ability, Nate, you're a younger guy, but if you had the ability to write yourself a letter after co-founding this business and doing that now for several years, if you had the ability to go back in time with this letter and some advice to yourself, what would you say to yourself? What would that advice that you wish you knew when you were younger be?
Yeah, I would say tactically, one thing that's been important in my business and I know is very important in real estate is just simply surround yourself with people who love legal. I will say the people who are, love words, love contract smithing and all of that. Because, we work with some really, really large enterprises as well. The contract law side of business is never fun, but it's super important in technology and in real estate. So I would say never skimp on a cheap lawyer. Always go with the expensive real estate lawyer or lawyer in general. Tactically, more strategically, I would have said seek out masterminds, seek out groups of folks who are what I always like to say, like one stage ahead of you in a way, which being younger myself, that's typically all people in work for me. I don't belong to any, I do belong to a few like tech masterminds. There's more like local entrepreneur masterminds here in Iowa that I think have been really great, that are more tech focused, that help me learn from founders who are one step ahead of me, basically, and have been there and seen the movie. And I know that exists in real estate too. We're pretty plugged into a number of masterminds in real estate, and I see huge value in those, even not as a realtor myself. I love listening into these masterminds in real estate because everyone in real estate is an entrepreneur in business for themselves. And I learn from them just as much as I learn from a tech entrepreneur as well.
It's great advice, Nate. The first part of that is obviously you're either going to pay now for good quality legal advice, or you're going to pay later because you got to have someone that cleans up the big mistake that you maybe skimped on getting the better advice at the beginning. And then the power of masterminds, the power of others, the power of people that are, again, one step ahead of you in the journey or two steps ahead in the journey. And I think of constant mentors that I've had that I think of as like big brothers or big sisters that are 3, 4, 5 years older than me, but then also 3, 4, 5 years ahead of me in my journey. It's just so nice to be able to say, here's what I'm dealing with. There's a very small group of people that would probably ever deal with this thing, because as you start to really grow a business and a brand, there's less and less people that you can pick the brain of. And having masterminds, having quality counsel, there's safety as it goes in scripture. There's safety in the multitude of counsel, and I think that's great advice, Nate. All right, final question. And this is a follow-up to the question I just asked you, that dear younger me question. I asked my career coach, we're in over episode 180 by now, and this was in episode 5. I asked my career coach, Chris Oakley, that same question, and he shared with me that he was in a mentoring group, some advice you just gave, Nate, and this was in his 20s, and part of the mentoring group was an exercise where they were required to do some required reading, really powerful stuff. And the book that I'm holding in my hand is by Andy Stanley. It's called The Principle of the Path. And my career coach, Chris, shared that they were required to read this book. And there's an exercise in the book where they actually have to write their own obituary. Kind of a morbid topic, but very structured. And like, how do I want to live my life? What do I want people to know me for at the end of my life? And I found it very poetic and unfortunately a bit tragic, because Chris passed away a few years after I asked him that question. And I knew that he lived on mission for a decade after having that exercise. So this is a tribute to Chris, where I ask all of my guests, what legacy they want to leave. As you grow a brand, as you help people out, what would you hope to be known for, hopefully decades from now, Nate, at your funeral? If someone was delivering your eulogy, what would you hope they would say about Nate Joens, the man and the person?
Yeah, I would say, to sum it up in a word, just humble. I think that Midwesterners as a whole, there's a whole fun phrase in Iowa called the Iowa nice, or Minnesota nice. If you're from Minnesota, we'll give some respect there too. So I think I love being around humble people. I love the Midwest. I love just humble people in general. I think that being remembered is kind of like, or what my legacy would be is kind of like, I don't know what the phrase is here, but like, I almost don't want to be remembered in a way, as from like a humility perspective. There should be like people who I helped across the board, but kind of under the table, behind the scenes, that it wasn't about me. And that's the people I like to surround myself around, that I'm doing the things behind the scenes. And I think that that's definitely one thing that I like to pride myself around. I don't want to beat my chest and say, oh, I'm so good at this, I'm so good at that. I've built this huge brand, I've built this huge company. I want it to be, how can I help you on a personal level? How can I help you when no one's watching? And kind of that whole eulogy analogy of, what do you do when no one's watching is kind of what I would want to, base my legacy around.
That's a great way to end our show. And I think of Tim McGraw's song, Humble and Kind, and a lot of your answer is in that. And as I have kids, my wife and I think our one desire is that our kids live a life that's humble and kind. And you can be Iowa nice or Minnesota nice and obviously humble. And doesn't mean that you're going to be, necessarily in a position where you're not going to do great things, but you're doing it for the betterment of others. You're not doing it to necessarily promote yourself. And I think realtors need to hear that, because we are in service of others. And a lot of us when you become good at what you do, you kind of think about like, okay, how am I going to continue to push my brand out there and talk about how good I am, instead of share what our client's journey is and our client's story. And I think that's really critical, Nate. Well, this has been a fantastic episode. I've got to thank our podcast producer, Ann Russell, for setting this up. Nate, I'm so excited to have people experience structurally, if they're thinking about AI, if they're thinking about integrating an ISA into their business, or just being more effective with the leads that they already have. Very cool stuff. So thank you for joining us today on the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and as I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.